Hey everyone, it's Zahava. Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are going to be talking about the 13 books that I regret reading in 2025. I thought this would be kind of a fun video because, I don't know, I don't think I've ever seen anyone do a video about books that they regret reading. I had some that I regret reading and I needed to get it off my chest. I needed to talk about it and I just thought it would be a fun video to sort of tackle. So we're going to do it and I'm going to tell you which books I regret reading and why. The first books that I regret reading, it's actually kind of part of a series, is the Zodiac Academy. I don't even know how many books I got through. I don't know who that girl was. I can never get that time back. I think it's pretty self-explanatory if you know me at all why I'm in this sort of headspace. It's you know, if you guys are unfamiliar with what they are, it's kind of like a dark academia situation where there's these young girls that go from an ordinary world to an extraordinary magical world where they find out that they are the princesses and they're supposed to be the heads of this land or kingdom, but they've been usurped by these 4 other families and they have to sort of go through these school trials in order to prove themselves worthy of becoming the rulers of this magical land. And I feel like I must have been on some sort of, I don't even know what planet I was on when I decided to read those books. I didn't read them. I don't own copies of them, but I did a lot of those on audio. And I don't know. I don't know. I don't know who that girl was. I'm not somebody that generally likes smutty, spicy type novels. It felt very young adult or new adult to me, even though there were some spicy graphic sex scenes. It's not something that I find I enjoy. I think I was just sort of swept up in the hype about those. And yeah, if there are regrets, there are some serious regrets about the time wasted on those books. If you guys are fans of those books, no shade, you know, no shade. They're just not written for me. I'm not the audience. And I was having a time. I was going down a very deep, dark rabbit hole. And I don't know who, like I said, I don't know what I was thinking, but I've abandoned that series many moons ago, and I am never going to go back to it. Next on this list is Defenestrate by Renee Braun. This book was just forgettable. It was sort of a coming-of-age, introspective, lit fic novel about a brother and a sister coming to terms with an abusive mother and their childhood in Prague. And it was just like a really slow-paced book that didn't go anywhere. I didn't really enjoy it. I felt like it was, I think that if it does have an audience, it has a very niche audience. I don't know what I thought the book was going to be. I know that the girl is dealing with like an alcohol addiction, I want to say, and that there's like a family curse where she believes that every one of her ancestors in one way or another has fallen out of a window, and she thinks that she's going to stop her brother sort of hurting himself. I don't really know what was happening in that story, but basically it was a completely forgettable story, or I don't want to say forgettable, but it wasn't really moving. And yeah, at the end, I was left feeling kind of bereft about it and just I don't see the need for anybody to ever read this book. So I don't know. For me, it just didn't work. Number 3 on this list is going to be Book of Night by Holly Black. This was a book that I found really strange. It started out really strong for me and I thought that I could get into the story, but in the end, I found that the prose was somewhat truncated. And I don't know why that is. Certain sentences were missing, I don't know, extra words, or certain paragraphs were missing extra words that would link one idea to another idea in a following paragraph. So it was almost like somebody was having heart palpitations or breathing problems. I felt like I was having both of those things when I was reading because there was like a disconnect between certain sentences and the next paragraphs that would come after that, where you felt like if the author would have taken just a little more time to fully flesh out her ideas and explain what it was that she was trying to convey, I wouldn't have felt so short of breath as I was reading. And when you read like in your head and you find that you're losing your breath, that's not a great sign. So I abandoned that series and that author as a result because I just felt that this book was, I don't know, I couldn't breathe by the time that I was done with it. And frankly, aside from a girl who's working with shadows that come to life that she falls in love with or something, I don't know, I could not keep the story straight. So that was definitely a book that I regretted having completed. Number 4 is actually the Winter Night Trilogy by Catherine Arden. This was a book series that kind of was Russian inspired. It started out really strong for me. I read it because I really enjoyed The Witch and the Tsar, and I thought that I was going to maybe potentially get something very similar. And while it started off really strong for me because we're following a young girl as she grows up and comes into her own magical abilities, I felt like the story didn't quite hit that adult level for me. I feel like it stayed in the very YA tone and YA mind frame, and I guess I was just looking for more adult content not necessarily steamy or sexual, but just like I needed more than the story gave me in terms of stakes, tension, grit, potentially. It just didn't go where I wanted it to go. And by the end of book 3 in this trilogy, I was actually skipping pages and skipping chapters because I just wanted to kind of see and sort of skim reading because I just wanted to see how the story was going to end after having spent so much time in it. And I just can't pick up another Catherine Arden book. I feel so let down and betrayed by this author. So I'm not really sure if I'm going to be able. I think she does also, if I'm not mistaken, The Warm Hands of Ghosts, which I heard really good things about. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure because if you know me at all, you'll know that if I'm disappointed in an author's work, I'm not likely to give them a second chance, you know? So, and I know that Danny of Danny Dabbles recently put out a video, which I will link in the description below, talking about what she does or how she deals with authors that disappoint. And she was trying to develop a discourse about what us in the bookish community do when we have authors that disappoint. And in this case, Catherine Arden did disappoint me. So I don't know, I kind of regret reading the series. But, you know, I just won't pick up any more of her novels. I also want to mention that the reason that we're seeing so many photos of the books here is because if I had owned these books, I will have unhauled them by the time you guys see this video. So I don't have any of these books anymore, and that is why I'm not showing you physical copies of these books. Some of the books that I'm talking to you about today were library books, but most of them I did physically own and then unhauled. So the next one I want to talk to you about that falls into that category is The Foxglove King by Hannah Witten. This was in a series of, I want to say it's a trilogy about poisonous plants, or plants that are used like toxic plants. So again, a very forgettable story for me. I liked it when I was in it, but if you asked me now what the story was about, I could not for the life of me tell you. I know that I finished it. I know that I bought the second book because while I was in it, Book Outlet was having a sale and I was so swept up in whatever the story was at that time that I'm like, yeah, I'm going to buy the second one and I'm going to love it. And then I just never ended up reading it. I guess I probably didn't like the way the first book ended. I think somebody also told me it was supposed to be, or I read somewhere that it was supposed to be a romantasy, which you guys already know that I struggle with. Like, it has to be done really, really well or very, very specifically for me to get on board with a romantasy. And I just, again, I was getting new adult vibes. Like, I'm not the audience for this type of novel. So I ended up unhauling this one along with the Hemlock Queen, which is, I think, the second book in the series. So yeah, that one was also a series kind of regret. The Ember Blade by Chris Whitting. Have you guys been around for a minute? Yeah, not a good book. Not a good book. I read through, I think, over 800 pages, might be 600 pages. In any case, it was a chonker. This was not a great book. It was boring, like eyes bleedingly boring. I've said it before on this, I've said it before in like previous videos. I did like Retribution Falls by the same author. I did like it so much in fact that I went ahead and bought the other 3 books in the quartet. I don't know. The Ember Blade was such a regret, such a waste of time. Every time that I thought I was going to DNF the book, the author changed the point of view character. And then I said to myself, okay, I'm just going to see where it's going. It's only 3 or 4 pages. I'm just going to see where it's going. It's only 3 or 4 more pages. And then it was a vicious cycle of doing that over and over again. And then eventually I found myself at the end of the book, and it was like a really bad orgasm. I don't know how else to explain it. It was like you're waiting, there's all this buildup, and then it just goes completely flat. So yeah, I said it, there it is. I do not recommend the Ember Blade. It is a waste of your time to read it. And it just, I don't know. I did not have a good time. I had regrets. I had regrets. Projections by S.E. Porter. This one took me a long time to get through. I had annotated it. It's not that it was a bad book. I don't want you guys to think that I'm only regretting having read bad books. It wasn't a bad book. It was just kind of a slog to get through. And it took place kind of like jumping back and forth between 1850s Victorian era, but the setting was in New York and some sort of fantastic magical world where the girl is transported, where our protagonist, Catherine, is transported sort of back and forth in the story between the actual world that we're in, New York City in 1850, and the magical world where she has been transported in her death. It is a story about revenge, a ghost getting revenge on the man who killed her. It also has to do with like wizardry and sexual, you know, it's there's queer representation. So it's not like a bad book, but it was a really slow read and a long read to get through. And also the parts where Catherine is in 1850, the prose and dialogue and language and vocabulary are all contemporary of that time. Whereas when they go into the magical world or they come forward into the future, it's a more colloquial way of speaking. The dialogue, the tone, the prose, and everything reflects what modern day times would be. So that can be a little bit jarring because Catherine's voice is kind of stuck in 1850. Whereas like Gus's voice kind of matures over time and changes because he's been around over 100 years. So I don't know. I feel like that's a book that is extremely, extremely niche, and the people that will love it will really, really love it. But I do not think, unfortunately, that it has a very wide appeal. And for that reason, I kind of regret reading it, but it's not like a total regret. It's like I regret how long it took me to read it or how much the book required of me. I regret giving it what it required of me. I don't know if that makes sense, but I feel like the effort that I put into finishing it was way more than the payout or the reward that I got for finishing it. So I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, projections. I think like the one stunning thing about this book, of course, is the cover. But other than that, I think that people would have to be extremely, extremely interested in revenge stories, queer stories. I think that people that will appreciate this book will have a very oddly specific need to read it. Book number 8 on this list is going to be The Monster of Ellenthaven. This was a novella written by a Canadian author that I borrowed from the library when I was looking for just a low-hanging fruit, and I got a low-hanging fruit. Like, this one was pretty much rotting. It was a completely forgettable novel, and I can never get this time back. Book number 9 is This Body's Not Big Enough for Both of Us. This was a brain-breaking type of novel. It was wacky, it was very pulpy, it was kind of a crazy time. I feel like I forced my way through it when I really should have DNF'd it. So it's basically about a brother and a sister who share the same body, but they're also like a detective team, like a private PI 1940s Dick Tracy style thing going on. Also, this is probably a case where the book is really made for a niche audience. Somebody has to really like the author's writing and style for it to make sense to them. Unfortunately, I don't think that this book was for me, but I know that now. So I'm probably not going to be picking up anything else by this author. An Evil Heart by Linda Castillo. So this one was partially my fault, but I don't think it's because it was a number 15 in the series. I think I just, and I'm going to explain why. So I picked up An Evil Heart. This had to do with the murder of, I want to say like an Amish boy. Which was what attracted me to the book in the first place when I read the little blurb in the dust jacket. I knew it was going to be a murder mystery. I knew it was number 15 in the series. I don't really care so much about the detective herself because I feel like when you have serial murder mysteries and it all features the same detective, I'm not somebody who's really bothered by knowing about the detective and their personal history and their relationships and things like that. When I go to these types of books, I go to them for the plot, for the story, for the murder mystery, and for however it's going to be solved. Now, the best thing about this book, honestly, was the prologue in which the murder takes place. And after that, I kind of felt that the book went steadily, linearly downhill from there. The writing was a very the writing felt very loose and unfocused. There was so much effort being paid to the fact that the main character was planning her wedding, and I just didn't care about that aspect of the plot line. And then in the end, I felt like the murderer being divulged was kind of a letdown for me. I just didn't like, I didn't like the writing. I didn't like the book. And I felt that I was a little bit deceived because the prologue where the murder originally happened was so violent and so jarring that I felt like the author had set me up for much higher expectations than what I received when I actually finished the book. So yeah, I was let down by that because it came out of the gate super duper strong, and I'm like, yes, okay, this author is really going to keep me on the edge of my seat, and she's going to be she's going to give me that grit, and she's going to give me that commitment and that raw honesty. And I did not get that. I didn't get that from this book. So that was a, not a DNF, but an experience in which I learned not to pick up any more books by this author, basically. So regrets. I don't know if I mentioned this at the beginning of the video or not. So in case I didn't, I'll mention it here, but these are a list of books, by the way, that I should have DNF'd in retrospect and that I didn't, okay? These are books that I plowed my way through knowing better, but I did it anyway. And the next one that I have to talk to you about is The Golem and the Jinni, which I know is probably going to piss off a lot of my viewers because this was a book that was really well received, but I just thought that it went on for way, way too long. Like, I feel like this book, 150 pages shorter, could have done it for me. Although I understand why the author chose to go in the way that she chose to go. And I know that it's a duology. I want to say there's a second book that follows it, which I'm not going to be picking up because I really enjoyed the story. Nothing wrong with the plot or the story, but I felt like the book dragged on and on and on and just wouldn't stop. And at some point, I just didn't want to pick it up anymore. Now, I don't know if that's because I had taken it out from the library and was feeling pressure to finish it, and it's a really big chunker. I'll put the page count across the screen, but I want to say it's over 500 pages. And I just got so tired of returning to the book that and maybe again, it could be because it was a library book and I did feel some sort of mental pressure to finish it because, I don't know, there's something about me where like if I have the book for 3 weeks, I really don't want to return it unread. And for some reason, I have this mental incapacity to want to renew a book. Don't ask. I don't know why I'm like that. I feel like if it's lent to me for 3 weeks, I should finish it within that 3-week period, even though I know I could renew it another 2 or 3 times. Anyway, I don't know if you guys are crazy like I am, but for some reason I have a mental block about renewing library books. Like, I don't know why. It's like I'm focused on deadlines or something. I don't know. But yeah, I just felt like The Golem and the Jinni was a book that should have been a lot shorter and could have accomplished a lot more succinctly. So I feel like I'm not going to continue in that series.
Editing Zahava here. So The Golem and the Jinni actually has 486 pages, but just to give you an idea how long it felt to me when I was reading it, like it could have been 500 or 600 pages, and that's like literally how it felt. But it was only 486 pages. Still, it felt like it dragged on and on and on. So I just wanted to put this in here and let you guys know. Now, back to the video.
Book number 12 is The Last Gifts of the Universe. This is a sci-fi brother and sister story where they have to sort of chase down the source of why the planets that they have come from have sort of died, disintegrated. They want to know, they're chasing basically history. They're chasing the source of why their planet is no longer in existence, and they have to go back to the source. It's kind of like a... That's basically the gist of it. Like, they're on a trail of information, but there's like warring parties that are trying to get the same information. And it's just kind of like how this brother and sister come to terms with their family trauma. And it's kind of like a coming of age sci-fi space opera situation. And I just felt very underwhelmed at the end of that book. And it is honestly kind of forgettable. Like, I had to really think about what the plot of this story was. And I know that I enjoyed it while I was in it. It's one of those cases where, like, when I was in the book, I enjoyed it. Like, I wasn't having a bad time. But then when I finished it, if I let it sit for a week, I had no idea what I had just read. Like, it just completely vanished from my brain. So that doesn't really feel like a good use of my time. And then on that basis alone, I regret reading it, but it's not like heavy regrets like in The Ember Blade. Those are some heavy regrets. This is kind of like just light regrets. And then the last book that I regret reading, which I feel like we can have a discussion about in the comments if you want to, is The Raven Scholar. This one is a book that I originally rated, I think 4 stars when I read it, but I think that a lot of that rating was probably due to the hype. When I actually finished reading it, sat back, digested it a little bit, I made a very clear and definitive decision not to continue on with this series. I feel like the author was trying to do too much. And even though the characters were in their 30s, and I think that this is what probably bothers me the most about this book, the characters are supposed to be in their 30s. You start out with them when they're younger, and then they sort of grow up, and it skips forward 20 some odd years. And they're in their 30s, but they're acting like they're 14. And I cannot get over that. Like, it wants to be a murder mystery, a dark academia, a fantasy, a magical chosen one situation, but the author was doing way too much. The prologue, again, we have a situation where the prologue sets you up for such an amazing punch and an amazing delivery. And the book just fell totally flat. So while I had originally rated this book 4 stars, I think in the end it's more like a 2.75, 2.5 for me after I had had time to sit and think about it realistically. And yeah, The Raven Scholar, again, when you have a 30 some odd year old character and a varied age range in your characters, please do not make them act like they are 14 years old, please, because you will lose all credibility with me. And that is what happened with The Raven Scholar. I felt kind of betrayed that the prologue led me to believe that the book was going to give me something that it absolutely didn't deliver. And I think if you've read this book, you will understand where I'm coming from. But yeah, that's pretty much going to bring us to the end of the video today. 13 books that I regret having read in 2025. I will probably regret having read these books forever, if I'm honest, but I thought you guys might like to come along with me as I reflect upon this journey. Thank you so much for hanging out. I hope you guys had a good time. Please take a moment to like this video if you liked it, subscribe to the channel if you want to hang out again, and I will see you again in the next video. Ciao for now.